Welcome back, everybody. This is Zach here, bringing us a fantasy football video. So I'm going to be going over 7 players that are pass catchers in the NFL that I think are poised for really just huge breakout seasons in 2024. These are all guys that I think are positioned to have the best seasons of their career. This is following up on videos I've done on both the quarterback and the running back position. Just sort of combined the wide receivers and the tight ends here because I didn't want to make a tight end video just because there aren't really enough tight ends to talk about there. But a lot of fun making these videos. These are all for these guys that I'm definitely targeting in my drafts because really you find a huge advantage in your fantasy drafts and just in fantasy in general if you manage to grab those guys before they break out. That's when you get that pre breakout value just because you're finding these guys before they've done it. They obviously come a lot cheaper before they put up these huge numbers, and that's how we're going to find these guys that can potentially help us win our leagues these seasons. So it's going to be a lot of fun going over these guys. Let me know if there's any disagreements you have, if there's any breakout players you guys are eyeing that I didn't mention. I love interacting and seeing what you guys are thinking of as well. So just a lot of fun doing this, and yeah, it's been fun finishing this up, and then we'll follow things up here with some busts, some more mock drafts, some sleepers. We'll get into some general draft strategy and all that. So a lot more videos to come, but start things out with this one. We'll get things started here with my first wide receiver. So the first wide receiver I want to highlight is actually Malik Nabers, and I just think he's being drafted far too low right now with an ADP of wide receiver 21. I think a lot of people are just sort of turned off from Malik Nabers because he wasn't the first wide receiver drafted in this draft class, but I think people need to understand that he would have been the first wide receiver drafted in almost any draft class that didn't have Marvin Harrison Jr. He comps very reasonably to guys like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. I'm not saying he's necessarily that level of talent yet, but I think the range of outcomes is certainly there for him to easily be just as good as those guys, and he's just an extremely talented player, someone that I really do think could easily end up being a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL, and I think that on top of that, people are really just turned off from him because we know the quarterback play is going to be bad in New York. But Daniel Jones is good enough to get the ball to Malik Nabers close to the line of scrimmage on a regular basis. Malik Nabers is elite with the ball in his hands after the catch. He's an elite route runner. He's going to be open all the time, and with a lot of potentially really close to the line of scrimmage action, we're going to see just the ball and this entire offense go through Malik Nabers. He's just far and away the best wide receiver on this Giants offense. I won't be shocked at all if he sees north of a 30% target share. In fact, I'm projecting it. I think he could easily see even upwards of like 33%, and that's just going to give him like 170 targets over the course of the season potentially. If he sees that kind of numbers, those kinds of numbers, he's easily going to be a steal. His draft value right now, he's going to have some massive plays just because of what he can do with the ball in his hands after the catch, and he's just such an elite route runner that I think he's going to get open downfield enough that Daniel Jones will even be able to hit him. Daniel Jones, we're not too far removed from Daniel Jones putting up a reasonable number, a reasonable season. We saw the Giants win a playoff game just 2 seasons ago. I'm not saying the Giants are going to be a good team or that Daniel Jones is a good quarterback, but they're certainly potentially better on offense than what people are giving them credit for. Malik Nabers is going to get Daniel Jones the first good weapon he's ever had, and I think Malik Nabers could easily end up being a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy this season. I have him ranked right around my wide receiver 15, but I think the sky really is the limit for this guy. There's no target competition here. He's going to be a monster. He's going to be the focal point of this offense, and I want to get a lot of Malik Nabers this season. Next up, I want to talk about George Pickens, who I think is a player that's just sort of gone under the radar too much so far this offseason and in previous seasons, but he really clearly does have the talent to put up some monster numbers. We've seen him put up highlight catch after highlight catch, and on top of that, he's actually been really productive over the course of the last 2 years. He had 1,140 receiving yards last season, despite just absolutely horrendous quarterback play between Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and on top of that, Deontay Johnson was still on the roster. For those of you who don't know, Deontay Johnson was traded to the Carolina Panthers this offseason and really replaced by nobody. They drafted Roman Wilson in the 4th round. They have Van Jefferson there. They've still got Calvin Austin, but really there is no significant target competition on this in this wide receiver room. It is George Pickens's receiving core. We know he's going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. And on top of that, the quarterback play in Pittsburgh is going to improve significantly, even if Russell Wilson isn't actually all that good compared to what he once was, even if Fields has to come in. Whatever range of outcomes happens here, there's no way the quarterback play is worse than what it was last season. And on top of that, Pickens should improve as a player in general, too. We see pretty significant jumps for players in terms of their performances going from year 2 to 3. And on top of that, 10 touchdowns is truly in the range of outcomes for George Pickens. We saw Courtland Sutton finish the season with 10 touchdowns last season with Russell Wilson there. I think George Pickens is a much better player than Courtland Sutton. And I think this offense is going to be better as well. I think the offense is really set up for success here. I think back to Arthur Smith in Tennessee. I think that's going to be a lot of what we're seeing here. A lot of this running game and play action style. George Pickens could be certainly a guy that can do a lot with the ball downfield. He's a great vertical threat, can easily make contested catches, and I think we're going to see a lot of play action bombs to Pickens this season. Pickens is going to have some really monster games this season, and if he's your wide receiver too, I think that's perfectly okay. I think he could easily end up being a top 15 guy. He's currently being drafted as the wide receiver 30 right now, so definitely a value there. I'm targeting Pickens in a lot of my drafts right now, and I think he could easily be a really solid player for us this season. Next, I wanted to go a little bit deeper, and I wanted to highlight Rashid Shaheed, who's a player that I've been pretty high on for each of the last several seasons. I just didn't think he had the opportunity to actually put up big numbers because he was playing as effectively the wide receiver 3 in the Saints offense. Sort of building on that, he played on only 46% of the snaps last season, and he still averaged 10.4 half PPR fantasy points per game. That means he was actually pretty useful despite being a halftime player. But Michael Thomas is gone. Rashid Shaheed really has no competition for being the wide receiver 2 in this offense. Cedric Wilson is set up to be the wide receiver 3 here. We're going to see Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave on the field a ton together, and he's obviously got a great relationship with Derek Carr. We saw them have great chemistry on connections downfield. On top of that, Clint Kubiak is the new offensive coordinator in New Orleans. That's something that I'm really excited about. He was just the passing game coordinator here for the San Francisco 49ers. We know that's a team that uses a ton of motion. Motion is just generally highly correlated to success in terms of offensive production. Both Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave have been ridiculously productive when put in motion pre-snap, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities here for this offense to take a huge step forward. They're going to be a modern offense compared to what they were last season, where they used the second least motion in the entire NFL. If you look at all the best offenses in the NFL, you've got the Chiefs, the Niners, the Dolphins. These offenses employ a ton of motion, and it helps your roster and your offense quite a bit if you can do that prior to the snap. And Rashid Shaheed should benefit from increased playing time along with increased production at the quarterback position and just the offense in general. So Rashid Shaheed, I think, is going to be a really solid wide receiver 3 flex kind of guy for us this season, a guy that you can play every single week and potentially get a huge breakout performance. And I think there is even a chance he actually just gets lucky in the touchdown department, ends up as like a top 25 wide receiver this season, and he's being drafted outside of the top 40. He definitely needs to be someone that we're targeting just because he's going so late in drafts right now. Next up, I wanted to highlight one tight end here, and he's someone that I just am super excited about this season, and that's going to be Trey McBride. I think Trey McBride can legitimately finish this season as the tight end 1, and he's just that dude. He really showed me on film last season, just watching him play, that he is one of the elite tight ends in the NFL. If you wanted to call him the most talented tight end in the NFL already, I think I would be willing to potentially take you up on that argument. I think he's got a shot or a case to be made there. He's going into his 3rd season. We don't really see tight ends break out until around this time in the NFL anyway, and the fact that he put up such monster numbers as a sophomore is just absolutely promising. And on top of that, he was the tight end 3 from week 8 on last season. That's ahead of Sam Laporta, who was the tight end 4 over the same stretch. Travis Kelce was the tight end 11 over that stretch. Trey McBride is clearly going to be an important part of this Cardinals offense. He is at worst going to be the number 2 target in what should be a really good offense with Kyler Murray coming into his 2nd year off the torn ACL. This is going to be a good offense, and there's even a chance here that Trey McBride ends up being the number 1 target. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a really good player in the NFL, but he's still a rookie. There's a chance here that at least early on, especially, that Trey McBride ends up leading the team in targets, and like I said, he's just that dude. He's an elite player. I'm super excited about him. He can do a lot with the ball in his hands after the catch. He's a great athlete. He's going to get open a ton. And like I said, I kind of believe it. And the more I talk about him, the more I watch him, I kind of think he's already the most talented tight end in the NFL. And he's also in a good spot. So I'm super excited about Trey McBride. I think he can legitimately put up a 10 touchdown, 1,000-yard season here. And he's someone that I'm definitely targeting, especially in like round 5 right now. He's just way too good of a value. Next, I just wanted to highlight 3 players that didn't quite make this video, but that were strongly considered. I'll start things off with Chris Olave. Largely, he didn't make this video because I talked him up so much last year and I didn't want to seem like I had take lock here. But Chris Olave is obviously someone that I'm super excited about. We know the talent is there. I talked a little bit about it when I was talking about Rashid Shaheed, but this offense is going to be a lot more modern than it was last season. I think there's going to be a lot more opportunity for success in the passing game here, and just everything's set up for Chris Olave. I think he should have a much better season than what he had last season, so I'm still super excited about him. Jameson Williams is someone else I've talked about a little bit this offseason as well, but I think Jameson Williams is actually in a pretty good spot to put up a good season here. He's obviously on a really good offense in Detroit, and on top of that, there's a lot of reason to assume he's going to play a lot more this season. They lost, why am I blanking on his name? Josh Reynolds. They lost Josh Reynolds this offseason. He's now a member of the Denver Broncos. So Jameson Williams is the number 2 wide receiver in this offense. He's going to be a full-time player here, and he's obviously an extremely talented and extremely explosive athlete and someone that could put up huge numbers if things break right. So Jameson Williams could certainly put up a breakout season this season. And then obviously I wanted to mention Dalton Kincaid. Why I didn't do a separate tight end video is because there were only 2 tight ends that I really felt deserved being talked about here. But Kincaid's a guy that obviously is going to potentially step into a huge role. We saw the Bills lose Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis this season. There are 240 plus targets available for these pass catchers to soak up, and Kincaid could easily end up being the number 1 target in this offense this season. Double-digit touchdowns is in the range of outcomes. He could potentially break 100 catches. He's someone that I certainly could see a really high outcome from, and he's obviously a part of a really awesome offense, and he's a good player as well. So I like Kincaid quite a bit. I don't quite like him quite as much as Trey McBride, but I think he's definitely in a spot where he could certainly put up monster numbers this season, and I would have no problem with him being my tight end going into week 1 this season. So that'll do it for the pass catching breakouts this season. These are all guys that I think are really potentially going to be some league winning draft picks this season and guys that I'm really excited about. Up next, I'm going to highlight some busts, players that I'm not finding myself drafting at all yet, just guys that I don't think are going to live up to that ADP and guys that I think are pretty easy avoids for me so far. So that'll be a fun video. It's sort of fun to see how you guys react to those. I know a lot of the times I talk about some of your favorite players and you guys get upset, which is kind of fun. But a lot of fun doing all these videos. We're going to keep pumping out several a week, getting to 3 and 4 as we get closer to the regular season. We'll obviously be doing 4 videos a week during the course of the regular season as well. So a lot more content to come. If you want to make sure you keep getting access to all that, just make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's all free always. Just going to be a lot of fun building a community here and having a lot of fun times just talking about fantasy football and playing fantasy football in the game we love here. So appreciate all you guys. It's been a lot of fun, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter @RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.